Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello, Bruce.
Hello, Simon. You're looking very fit and fine and fabulous today.
Ah, the wonders of a digital representation on a screen.
You look as though you've been eating well.
I haven't been eating too badly, actually. Yes, I've had my my most important meal of the day, but we'll come on to that later.
What? Why will we do that? I know. It's because we're doing breakfast.
We are doing breakfast, yes. Let's do it right now. Let's have this meeting over a big fat fry-up. Now, before we get started, by way of explanation to anyone who's accidentally in the wrong place at the wrong time, welcome to Factoraly. This is a weekly podcast with two British voiceovers who get together and talk about interesting random facts from seemingly dull subjects.
Yes. So our day jobs are sitting in padded rooms,
Yes.
sound-treated rooms, talking into very nice, expensive microphones and telling people how wonderful things are and how to do stuff.
Yes, that sums up my job. And then just for funsies, when we finish doing all of that, we get together and we pick out the interesting facts from all and sundry.
Yes.
So this week's random subject is breakfast.
Breakfast, yes.
So Bruce, talk to me about your experience of breakfast. Are you a breakfast kind of man?
I quite like breakfast. I feel a bit like you. If I need to lose a bit of weight, then that's the only meal that I'll cut out, really. Because
Right.
I'll sort of like stop eating breakfast. But I have a standard breakfast. You know how like some people have like standard clothes that they wear just like so they don't have to think about what they're going to wear every day.
Yes, I have several versions of the same red plaid shirt in my wardrobe.
I think people do the same thing with breakfast generally.
Yeah.
You sort of like you get up in the morning, you go, oh, and you put 2 slices of bread in the toaster, and then you get out the butter or whatever, and you get out the Nutella and the peanut butter and the jam or whatever it is that you, or you smash a few avocados, whatever you do, and you get on with the day. It's only sort of generally at the weekends that people ring their changes. Generally, I think. What about you?
I mean, I love a good breakfast. I will very, very happily go out somewhere and have a fried breakfast or a brunch of some kind. Absolutely delicious. When I do eat breakfast at home, it's usually quite dull and efficient. It's just a bowl of cereal because it's necessary, it's functional. I haven't really got much time before doing the school run. Let's get something down. But at the moment, I'm intermittently fasting and therefore I'm not doing breakfast and lunch. Just my own preference, not advocating it to anyone. It has mixed opinions. Don't take my word for it. But in theory, yes, I love breakfast. Just not right now.
I imagine that the kind of breakfast that you love is one that we're going to talk about. And we should talk about it right now.
Go on then.
Let's talk about the full English breakfast.
That almost wants to be done in some kind of a voice of God-esque. The full English breakfast kind of way, doesn't it?
It does. So, or the full Irish breakfast, or the big Australian breakfast.
Or the standard American breakfast.
Any country basically that we've had an empire at any given time has a breakfast.
Yes.
Which consists of probably a fried egg.
Yes.
Or 2. Probably bacon.
Certainly.
Probably some sort of sausage and some sort of fried element, which can be bread or potatoes or something.
Yes.
And there are options, things like baked beans.
Tomatoes, mushrooms, black pudding, toast, chips, anything, really, anything at all you can put onto the side of those key sort of 4 or 5 ingredients, yeah.
Yes, but the full English, basically, the idea was it was enough calories to keep you going for the rest of the day because you didn't actually stop for lunch.
Yes.
So you would eat enough calories to make you, fit and strong until you got home at sort of 4 o'clock in the afternoon or whenever it was that your working day finished. And what happened was that this breakfast, which has its variations all over the world, became unnecessary to some degree because people started to work in sitting down professions.
Oh, I see. So you don't need so much.
So you don't need so much energy. If you're a farmer, you need that help to tote that barge, lift that bale.
Yes.
But if you're going to just sit there with a quill or a laptop, then you don't need it.
It's not quite so necessary.
No.
So I saw, as with many of these things, it is impossible to put an original date on it, because no one has ever sat down with a big fat breakfast and written down, I am the first person to ever eat this meal. It just wouldn't work. But there are records of a breakfast meal that sounds remarkably like what we've just described, going back to the 13th century.
Yes.
In this country, at least. And at the time, it was the preserve of the wealthy. It was a feast that one had in one's feasting hall because one was opulent and could afford to do so.
A feast to break your fast.
To break your fast. Breakfast, indeed.
And I've mentioned that there are various different iterations. We call it the full English because we're English. But there are also, like, there's an Ulster breakfast,
yes,
which includes the soda farries, which is soda bread.
Okay.
There's sort of like going around the country. Then we go to Wales. They use lava bread in a Welsh breakfast. There's a thing called lawn sausage in a Scottish breakfast.
Lawn,
which is lawn, Lorne. Lawn.
Not as in grass.
Correct. Lawn sausage is like a sort of like 1/2-inch thick square of sausage meat.
Sounds all right to me.
But you fry it. There's no skin on it.
Right.
And some people swear by it. They think it's lovely. I'm not so sure. With Scottish breakfast,
sort of a sausage patty.
Yeah, and with a Scottish breakfast, you also get haggis, fried haggis, and white pudding and black pudding.
Yes, good.
But white pudding is more sort of oaty, which is very similar to something they have in, ironically, from all the way up to the north of Scotland. You go back down to Cornwall, down in the very south of England, and they have a thing called hog's pudding. Oh. And hog's pudding is practically identical to white pudding in Scotland.
Is it?
And they even do one which is quite similar to haggis.
Oh, okay.
And a black pudding. Yeah, so this hog's pudding, this Cornish hog's pudding is something that goes into a full Cornish.
A full Cornish, of course, yes. Wouldn't want to mix that up with a full English, would you?
No.
I've had a full Irish whilst on holiday in Ireland, and it included something called a boxty. Boxty, boxty, which was a sort of a fried potato pancake, which was actually very nice. It looked out of place, but it was very nice, and served with a little glass of whiskey on the side as well. A huge bowl of porridge.
Sorry. Well, back. Whiskey for breakfast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Start the day as you mean to go on, Bruce. Yes, there were. I sort of hopped from one B&B to another around Ireland, around the Atlantic Way, and a couple of places served a little glass of whiskey that you could either sort of pour into your porridge or just neck at will. It went down a treat.
How do you like your porridge?
How do you like your porridge in the morning? I like mine. I'm not really a massive fan of porridge, actually.
Are you not?
If I were to have it, I would have it with honey or golden syrup or something like that.
Yeah, you see, I never used to be a fan of porridge until I started spending a lot of time in Scotland. And then I discovered a thing called pinhead oatmeal.
Ooh.
And pinhead oatmeal is delicious. But you have to cook it the night before.
Okay.
Or even the day or 2 days or a week before. And you make a whole lot of porridge using this pinhead oatmeal, and you soak it and then you cook it. And what they used to do in Scotland was they would cook a whole bunch of porridge up and keep it in a zinc-lined drawer in the kitchen.
Okay.
So you'd have like a porridge drawer.
That's brilliant.
And you would chop like a square of porridge out of the drawer,
right,
and then put it in a bowl, heat it up, or put it in a saucepan, heat it up, and then put maybe a bit of milk or cream and a bit of. Yeah. I like mine with a bit of Scottish heather honey,
nice,
rather than sugar, and quite a bit of salt, and it is absolutely delicious.
That does sound rather good. Now, this might garner an awful lot of comments, but I know we have quite a few Scottish listeners to this show. If anybody can share their own experiences of pinhead porridge or any other local dishes, wherever you're from, tell us what your favourite kind of breakfast is.
Oh, yeah, tell us what your breakfast is. Oh, we'd love to know what sort of breakfast you have where you live. What do you know about muesli?
I know that it's tasty. I know that it's made of rolled oats and bits of grain of other variety. I don't know much, really, actually, as I'm saying it out loud. What do you know about muesli, Bruce?
I know that it was invented in Switzerland in about 1900
Okay.
by a Swiss doctor called Maximilian Bircher-Benner.
Once more, just for Lloyd's.
Dr. Maximilian Bircher-Benner.
Very good.
Although his idea of muesli wasn't what we think of currently as muesli necessarily.
Okay.
But what he did was he got some rolled oats, not the pinhead, the flatter oats, and he would soak them in lemon juice.
Okay, interesting.
And condensed milk.
Right.
And apple juice and bits of apple overnight. And then that's what you would eat in the morning. That was the very first muesli back in 1900s.
Right, okay. My only experience of muesli is Alpen.
Oh, yes.
Which, for some reason, I can't explain this for a second. When I go on holiday, I often buy things that I don't have the rest of the time in order to sort of make it special and punctuate it slightly.
It's like going shopping around a supermarket with all the unusual and different stuff that you find in supermarkets.
Yes, exactly, yes. And every now and then I pick up a box of muesli that just lasts me the length of the holiday, and that's very nice, and I don't have it at any other time. So that's my full experience of muesli, is a bowl of Alpen.
And hence, I mean, the reason it's called Alpen, obviously, and the picture of the Alps on it is because it's got that link back to the Swiss. Breakfast cereal is one of those things that has come along quite a long way since then.
This is a massive subject. I mean, forget breakfast as a whole. We could have done a whole episode just on cereal. I held back slightly just because it's such a big topic, but I had a quick look at Kellogg's. I had a quick look at the Kellogg's cornflake, and this goes back further than I realised, all the way back to 1898. The Kellogg brothers, William and John Kellogg, they were making granola, about which I know even less than muesli. So if you've got anything to tell me about granola later on, please do. They were making granola, and somehow or other they got the recipe slightly wrong, and they ended up accidentally making flakes of wheat flakes. And they thought, oh, that's quite nice. I wonder if we can turn that into a thing. And they changed the recipe and they experimented a few times. They ended up using corn instead of wheat, and ta-da, cornflakes were born. I didn't realise they were that old or that unintentional.
Yeah, they were like the first sort of like mass-produced breakfast cereal like that.
Yeah. I was never able to eat cornflakes without a large helping of sugar when I was a kid. I then moved on to Frosties and all the other sugar-laden, terribly unhealthy cereals that came after that.
Well, interesting, because actually of the two brothers, John Harvey Kellogg was a doctor.
Right.
And his brother wasn't a doctor. And Dr. John Kellogg was going, oh, no, we mustn't put any sugar in this. It's very bad for you. The point of this cereal, well, I'll get on to the other point of the cereal in a minute. But the point of the cereal is to be healthy and for people who want to live a good life. We don't want to ladle it full of sugar. And Bill Kellogg said, well, maybe it would taste nicer and people would eat more of it and buy more of it and we'd be richer if we put a bit of sugar in.
Right, okay. That seems reasonable. He knew his market.
So I made mention there of something other than health reasons why cornflakes exist.
Yes.
Do we do a trigger warning now?
Oh, okay, we must.
Okay, trigger warning. Sex is now being mentioned for the next few minutes.
No one would ever have expected that to be the topic that immediately follows cornflakes.
No, well, cornflakes were invented. John Kellogg felt that the more luxurious your breakfast, the more lascivious your lifestyle.
Right.
So he believed that if you had like luxuries and glories and everything, you would become quite sexual and you'd become quite rude.
Oh.
And he felt that sex is actually very bad for you. He felt so strongly that sex was bad for you that he and his wife, he was married, had separate bedrooms, practically lived in separate houses, never had sex, but he had 8 kids.
Oh.
All adopted.
Okay.
So he adopted 8 children.
Huh.
And the most detrimental aspect of sex to him was self-gratification.
Sure.
So the idea of cornflakes was to reduce your sex drive to the point where you didn't feel like playing with yourself.
Oh, that's brilliant. Everyone's having so much fun. Tell you what, we need to temper everyone down a little bit. Let's introduce cornflakes.
They got around a bit, though, cornflakes.
Did they? Where did they get around to?
The moon.
Did they? They took cornflakes to the moon?
They took cornflakes to the moon.
Huh.
They Kellogg's made some special packs for astronauts. It was like a sealed pack that contained a portion of cornflakes and some freeze-dried milk. So it was not too heavy. Mm-hmm. And then you would basically add water to this pack, give it a bit of a shake, and the freeze-dried milk would turn back into milk. And you could have your cornflakes and milk on your way to the moon.
That's great.
One of my favourite things when I was on holiday, I don't know whether you get this, there are these little boxes of cereals.
A variety pack.
They were a variety pack.
Yes. Love that.
Now, I used to think that they were really useful because you could just pour the milk straight into the box.
You Philistine. Really?
Well, you can, because it's like a greaseproof paper, so it doesn't leak. You just open the box, just pour the milk in.
Sure, you can, but should you? To quote Jurassic Park, you were so busy thinking about whether or not you could, you didn't stop to think if you should? That just seems odd.
But you used to get, what was your favourite of the variety packs?
Cocoa Pops.
Cocoa Pops.
Yeah.
I used to like Rice Krispies.
Did you? Snap, Crackle and Pop.
Well, you say snap, crackle and pop because you're British.
Indeed. They're international versions.
There are international versions. So in Norway and Sweden, they're called Piff, Paff, Puff.
Oh, I like that. That's nice.
And Belgium is very similar. It's Piff, Paff, Poff.
Piff, Paff and Puff.
Yes. In Finland, it's Pox, Rix and Rax. In Germany, Knisper, Knasper, Knasper.
Oh, that's nice.
And in Italy, again, it's Piff, Paff, Puff.
Wow. Right. Okay. So the Snap, Crackle and Pop is onomatopoeic. It's linked to the sound that they make when they're all crackling in the bowl.
Yeah.
Piff, Paff, Puff seems more like a description of the look and the shape and the method of making those things in so much that they're sort of puffed up and filled with air.
Like small explosions.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, originally, Snap was on his own for a while. And Snap was joined by Crackle and Pop during the Second World War.
Good to have a buddy. I've just suddenly remembered one of my claims to fame is that I used to work with the Honey Monster. The mascot of Sugar Puffs was this yellow, fluffy creature called the Honey Monster. And I used to work with a gentleman who put that suit on for those commercials during the 80s.
Oh, wow. Talking of commercials for cereal, as you're expecting fully, I guess.
I was.
Yes, I did commercials for cereal back in the day.
Of course you did. Any particular ones?
Well, the one you'll remember is the ones I did for Ready Brek.
Right.
Central Heating for Kids.
You wrote that?
Yeah.
Great. Now, I really like a continental breakfast. I do love a full English, but whenever I go away anywhere and they have that kind of spread on, I won't bother with the hot stuff. I'll just make an absolute meal out of the cold meats and cheeses and pastries and that sort of thing. And, quite a staple of that is the croissant.
Oh, yes. Yes, of course. I love a croissant.
Having a croissant with your coffee is a lovely continental thing to do for breakfast. And you can't really get more French than a croissant, can you? Except they're actually Austrian. So what we now know as the croissant was invented in Austria really long time ago in the medieval era. There was something that was roughly croissant shaped that was being served for breakfast in Austria, originally known as the Kipfel. And it was much later, like hundreds of years later, that France found it, twisted it a bit, made it a little bit lighter and puffier, and called it a croissant. I find that fascinating that something so quintessentially French wasn't originally French.
Absolutely.
And obviously having that with a nice cup of milky coffee. In Italy, it's thoroughly frowned upon to drink a milk-based cup of coffee past 11 a.m. I'll have a cappuccino or a latte any time of day at all, but in Italy, milky coffee is very, very much a breakfast
thing,
a breakfast item. And the tangents, there are tangents upon tangents here. I'm sure we'll do an entire episode on coffee one day, but very briefly, I was just sitting there thinking about having a croissant and a cappuccino, and I remembered the name of cappuccino comes from Italian Capuchin friars, monks, because they wore sort of a creamy brown habit and roughly the colour of a cappuccino.
Of course.
And that's why they were named that. also the same reason that capuchin monkeys are named that as well, because they're a similar colour.
Oh, and not because they have that bald spot on the top of their heads?
No, not because of that. No.
Okay, interesting. So the croissant is actually Austrian then?
Originally, yes.
There is an Austrian and German expression about bacon.
Go on.
There is a thing called Kummerspeck, and Kummerspeck is grief bacon.
Grief
bacon, and it's basically the weight gain that you put on when you're unhappy. Is called Kummerspeck.
Oh, that's great.
Henry VIII liked a good breakfast, but not just for himself.
Okay.
His ladies in waiting for his brides also got given an allowance of breakfast.
Right.
And their allowance for breakfast was 2 loaves of bread per breakfast.
What?
A joint of beef per breakfast. And a gallon of ale.
Fine. Well, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
I found out that kippers, having kippers for breakfast.
Oh, yes.
Which I've never done. I've never fancied the idea
I like
of that.
kippers.
Do you?
Yeah.
I used to think a kipper was a fish. It's actually a way of preparing a piece of herring, isn't it? Kippering. It's a verb. It's a style of cooking.
He was a poet, wasn't he, Kippering?
Kippering. He also made exceedingly good cakes. So, yeah, you take a herring, you split it, you smoke it, not like a cigar, but,
Yep.
you put it over a smoky fire, and that's a kipper. And these have been served for breakfast throughout the land, for years and years and years. But it was in 1842 that Queen Victoria, whilst on holiday to Scotland, had kippers for breakfast.
Oh.
And the whole thing became very popular because, obviously, whatever the royalty is doing, everyone else is going to copy.
Oh, yeah.
So that's when kippers for breakfast became such a popular thing. I think they've fallen out of popularity now. I can't think of the last time I've seen that as an
You
option.
can buy boil-in-the-bag kippers now, which is kind of...
Can you?
And they're all sort of properly boned and everything. So it's just literally
Okay.
just the fish, usually with like a little sort of bit of butter in there and stuff as
Yeah.
well, so it goes buttery. I always remember my mum going to the fishmongers and asking for kippers by the pair. So
A pair of
like
kippers?
a pair of kippers. So a pair of kippers was basically one herring
Oh, I see.
that had been split in half.
So it looks like two.
So
sort
it
of
looks like
rings
two.
and-
So she asked for a pair of kippers, just meant one.
I found it quite interesting seeing where things come from. So, the French croissant is from Austria. The kipper was popularised by Queen Victoria visiting Scotland. Orange juice being drunk at breakfast became popular in America in the 1920s as a response to the Spanish flu.
Oh, okay.
As a health boost, getting your vitamin C.
Yeah.
Belgian waffles, I had a bit of a brief look down. My son loves Belgian waffles. They were originally, they came from Brussels, where they were created in 1839, and they were introduced to America much later in 1964 at the New York's World Fair by a restaurateur called Maurice Vermesch.
Uh-huh.
He took these waffles to America, and he thought, these Americans, they've probably never heard of Belgium. They probably don't know that Brussels is the capital of Belgium. I'll call them Belgem. B-E-L, new word, G-E-M, waffles. It's a cute sounding little name.
Yeah.
So Belgian waffles were originally marketed as Belgem waffles. Isn't that great?
Because, American health kicks have been responsible for a few things.
Sure.
For example, in the 60s, there was this big health kick for breakfast, and people started to have yogurt for breakfast
yes.
in the 60s. It wasn't really a thing before that at all.
No, I've forgotten all about yogurt for breakfast.
And so it was considered like a healthy. I don't think they talked about your digestive tract and all the horrible stuff that an active yogurt will do to your gizzards, but it was the thing to do, to have yogurt for breakfast.
Now, you mentioned the gargantuan breakfasts of Henry VIII's wives. I tried to find a Guinness record for the largest full English breakfast. So many parameters, so many things that define biggest. There's one record for the heaviest breakfast served in a restaurant, in this country at least. There was a cafe in Bolton called Mario's Cafe, and they serve up a 2.9 kilogram plate of bacon and eggs.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
2.9 kilo. That's nearly 6 pounds.
6.5 pounds.
6.5. Okay.
Yeah, of bacon and eggs for only £10.95. And if you can finish it within 20 minutes, you'll eat it for free, and then probably
and die.
Go and have a heart attack. So that's one record. That's obviously not a full English. That's just bacon and eggs, but certainly very big. I found a cafe in Doncaster who serves up this full English breakfast. It's estimated to contain around 17,000 calories.
Okay, that's 8 times your daily intake?
Approximately, yeah. And this cafe serves up this thing that consists of 15 rashers of bacon, 15 hash browns, 15 fried eggs, 15 pieces of black pudding, 15 slices of toast, 15 portions of mushrooms, 15 portions of baked beans, 15 portions of tinned tomatoes, and 15 double-sized sausages on a very, very large plate.
Wow.
And you're invited to join in the challenge and see if you can eat this thing within an hour. I mean, I don't fancy it.
Well, I have no more facts about breakfast, so I think it's about time that we did have breakfast.
That's us done then. We have gone on for long enough.
Have a wonderful time. Have a wonderful breakfast.
And thank you for listening
to Factoraly. Subscribe, like, share, tell your nerdy mates.
We know you have them. You're just like us.
Yes.
And please come again soon.
Bye.
Cheerio.